Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for a slight 4 minutes delay. We were trying to make sure that we have all the speakers gathered and lined up together. My name is Maria Martis-Suits. I'm a policy analyst at European Policy Center and absolutely delighted to be the moderator for today's policy dialogue on the reconstruction of Ukraine, enhancing socio-economic and defense potential. We will proceed with a 5-minute introductory remark by Amanda Paul, the Deputy Head for Europe in the World Programme. And then I will introduce the speakers with overall objectives of today's event. And we will go straight into round one, followed by discussion, and then round two of speakers, followed by discussion and conclusion of the event. So without further ado, Amanda Paul, you've got 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and I will try my best to stick to the limit. So good morning, everybody. I'd also like to give you a very warm welcome to all of our speakers and guests. This event is part of the EPC's Ukraine programme, which I lead together with my colleague Svetlana Taran. The topic of today's meeting is of crucial importance. Ukraine's reconstruction and recovery after years of Russian aggression is going to be a huge task. Russia's relentless assault has caused immeasurable humanitarian suffering and death, as well as large-scale damage to Ukraine's infrastructure and natural environment. Ukraine's energy sector today is on the brink of collapse following almost never-ending attacks. Landmines litter the country, making Ukraine the most heavily mined country in the world. And of course, Russia continues to purposely target civilian infrastructure with zero regard for human life, including the recent barbaric attack on the Children's Hospital in Kyiv. What we need to see is consolidated and scaled up international support for Ukraine's defense needs, starting with many more air defense systems. Recovery and reconstruction, both immediate and long-term, is of vital importance. Ukrainians and the international donor community need to have a unified around the vision for and approach to Ukraine's reconstruction to ensure efficient resource utilization and impactful collaboration. Ukraine must be provided with multi-year sustainable and predictable financial recovery and military assistance commitments to establish a reliable investment ecosystem. Supporting reconstruction during wartime is a vital ingredient to Ukraine's victory, morale, and future economic prosperity. This means that Western companies should already be encouraged to incentivize and invest in Ukraine. Private investment should be a part of and enable Ukraine's European integration. Successful long-term reconstruction and modernization projects should be based on the principle of Build Back Better in line with EU standards. Now, coming to the Ukraine's Recovery Conference that took place a couple of months ago, this conference produced several important decisions and substantial financial commitments aimed to consolidate and scale up international support for Ukraine's immediate and long-term recovery and reconstruction. This included launching the Ukraine Investment Framework under the Ukraine Facility Programme, which is aimed at the greater involvement at private sector, which is expected to play a pivotal role in Ukraine's reconstruction and economic growth. Indeed, greater participation of the private sector was an important achievement of the Berlin Conference, which included the participation of the defense industry as one of the key business sectors. But implementation of all these decisions will be crucial. And my last remarks, because I know I'm getting to the 5 minutes, Russia must be made to pay. This is for sure. While the decision of the recent G7 summit to use the interest from Russia's frozen sovereign assets is good news, ultimately we need to find a way to use the entirety of this money. In this respect, I would like to draw your attention to a recent EPC paper by our colleague Yulia entitled "No More Excuses, Debunking Arguments Against Seizing Russian State Assets for Ukraine." Ukraine is full of resilient, clever, innovative brilliant people. Many of them are my friends at a national, local, grassroots level, in government, in civil society, and business, who will all have a key role to play in the reconstruction and recovery of their country. We have 4 of them with us today, and I'm really delighted to see you all together with the other great panelists. And I look forward to hearing from you all and having a very good discussion. And with that, I will hand the floor back to Maria.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for putting this in broader context. I'd like to proceed by introducing all the 6 panelists today. We will start with Dr. Tymofiy Mylovanov, who is the president of the Kyiv School of Economics and is associate professor at the University of Pittsburgh. He served as the deputy chairman of the board of the National Bank of Ukraine and as the Minister of Economic Development, Trade and Agriculture of Ukraine. Previously, he also served as advisor to the head of the Presidential Office of Ukraine and as chairman of the supervisory board of Ukroboronprom, an association of multidisciplinary enterprises in various branches of Ukraine's defense industry. And in 2024, he was reappointed as a member of the supervisory board. We also have Mr. Pierre-Arnaud Proux, who is the former banker with more than 10 years of experience in the Commission in competition and industry policy. He's also a former member of cabinet of Executive Vice President Vestager. We also have Fabio Liberti, a policy officer of the European Commission from DG DEFIS, who is the pen holder of the European Defense Investment Gap Analysis and the key instruments and communications related to ramping up European defense industry, including for European Defense Industrial Strategy. Next, we have Anna Derevyanko, Executive Director of the European Business Association of Ukraine. She's co-founder and CEO of Global Business for Ukraine, an association aimed to unite international businesses around Ukraine. Moreover, she's a member of the supervisory board of Raiffeisen Bank, member of the Globsec Support Council, Ukraine Invest, Business Ombudsman, Board of Directors for the Children of Heroes, and member of the Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce Advisory Council. We will then proceed with Gennadiy Chyzhykov, who has been the president of the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Industry since 2013, and a member of the Board of Directors of the General Assembly of the European Parliament Euro Chambers and the World Federation of Chambers. Mr. Chyzhykov is also the founder of the first local ISA committee in Ukraine, and he is a doctor of economics and a professor. And we have Maryna Petrychenko, who is the head of Serhiy Prytula Humanitarian Foundation. She leads the foundation managing strategic projects like healthcare projects, safe and smart for the reconstruction of schools, shelters, and the Nest, modular temporary housing, as well as the humanitarian demining. With a background in business administration of international project management, she has been instrumental in supporting war-affected communities in Ukraine. I'm absolutely delighted to have this distinguished set of panel, and I would like to proceed with the first round of interventions, which will feature Tymofiy, Pierre-Arnaud, and Fabio. Each of you have about 5 to 7 minutes for introductory remarks, and we will follow it with about 15-20 minutes of discussion. Audience, I'm appealing to you, asking you to raise your hands or to put questions in Q&A box that you can see at the very bottom of your screen so that we can have a lively discussion. Tymofiy, I would like to start with you. The investment needs for the reconstruction of Ukraine are absolutely huge, and the price is increasing every day. Money is needed for everything, from paying salaries to demining the farmland, to reopening schools, maternity hospitals. And Ukraine is paying for that financially or monetarily and intellectually, but also literally through the blood and sweat. You are living in Ukraine. You have first-hand experience in seeing what is happening on the ground. You, in particular, and your wider team within Kyiv School of Economics contributed to the analytical support of the Ukraine plan. talk to me. Why Ukraine plan is so important? What are the high priority sectors? And since you attended the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin, I'd be grateful to hear what you thought were the main outcomes. Thank you very much. You have 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you. The Ukraine plan, or standard name Ukraine Facility, is actually a financial support program from 2024 to 2027. So it's a medium range facility to support Ukraine. It's not a defense facility, it's economic facility. The medium support is important given the political instability that, just geopolitical and domestic political situations. And so in London Conference on Recovery, Ursula von der Leyen announced that there will be a facility, medium range facility. And a year later, indeed, it's in place. So that's a success. That's an example of a strategic approach and institutionalized approach towards support of Ukraine. It gives us stability, much needed stability. It builds on the previous macroeconomic support, which was annual from the EU. And the amount now is 50 billion euros over 3 years. It has 3 main components, which you might hear being called pillars. One is the support for Ukraine. That's basically budget support. It goes to the state budget, to the national budget, to the local budgets, and then there is investment fund. And when we talk about discussions in the private sector participation, that's the pillar 2 that we refer to. At the conference in Berlin, there is an announcement of the Ukraine investment guide prepared by the Ministry of Economy and the government and the Kyiv School of Economics, which lists flagship projects for investments. And that's that part of finance in which will go into the private sector. And then there is that amount is about 7 billion euros. And then there is also technical assistance, 4+ billion euros. The Ukraine plan comes with conditionality, as often is the case, and it has about 69 reforms, and it has to achieve or meet 151 indicator. I'm just giving the numbers, not because there is much information in it, just because they underline the scope of the reforms and the indicators, specific measurable outcomes that have to be met and are being met. So that's not the only conditionality for reforms. There's the IMF plan, there is bilateral conditions, there's the World Bank, there are multiple IFIs, DFIs. Then all of it is compiled in what is called reform metrics, and it has just for this year about 400 indicators. So it is insanely intense. The agenda for reforms during the war for Ukraine, and it's being met. So in many ways, it is remarkable. And of course, it's also comprehensive. Then there is a question of sequencing and priority and approaches. But basically, we have seen the priorities within the Berlin conference. It was decentralization, so local governments maintaining the democracy in Ukraine. It was private sector, it was energy, and it was overall governance and defense. The Ukraine plan consists of 3 types of reforms. This is the enabling reforms. This is judicial reform, public financial management, anti-corruption reform, the rule of law. Then there are economic reforms, and they are split into human capital, business environment or business climate, financial markets, and state asset management and privatization. So these are the 4 areas for the reforms. All of them enable Ukraine to get proper access to capital markets and for businesses and allow for growth. And then there are sectoral reforms. You asked me about which sectors are the priority, and these are energy, agriculture and food production, transport and logistics for exports, critical materials, and of course, not in this plan, but overall in Ukraine priorities, of course, defense industry. Over the conference, you asked me about the results of the conference. About 110 international agreements were concluded on top of the Ukraine facility, totaling about 16 billion euros. The bigger ones of them, which made the news, are, for example, the first guarantee and grant agreements for 1.4 billion euros under the investment component. So these are specific agreements which are cascading down from the broader umbrella of the Pillar 2. The announcement of the package of support to the Ukrainian energy sector, which is basically paramount coming to the coming to the winter from the United States for the amount of about 800 million. Part of this is repurposing the previous support, but the majority of the support is new. Creation of the Alliance for the Resilience of Small and Medium-Sized Businesses for 7 billion euros, and the Skills Alliance, that's the human capital angle, for more than 700 million euros. But even the Kyiv School of Economics, on top of presenting the investment guide, the energy damages, the reform matrix, we also signed a bilateral agreement with one fund one Nordic fund, one Baltic country fund, for human capital enhancement. So this 110 agreements, that's actually the most comprehensive, I would say, bilateral or multilateral fair for Ukraine. It felt like a business conference. It felt as a place where there's, of course, standard approach of politicians speaking, but also a lot of businesses signing deals and being more integrated with Europe. Now, this is basically it on the Berlin conference and Ukraine facility in short, but we are working against the background of major defense uncertainty and geopolitical instability and the US elections. So we have to do as much as possible to achieve stability and to establish as many horizontal relationships as possible to fully integrate or to integrate as much as possible Ukraine into the EU environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for highlighting and putting in broader perspective Ukraine facility and its relationship with Ukraine plan and highlighting the key reforms and aspects in such detail. Really appreciate that. Pierre-Arnaud, we're going to turn to you in terms of Ukraine facilities. So we heard already some key characteristics of what Ukraine facility is. I'd like you to delve on that a bit more in detail. And we heard that over 110 agreements were signed, mobilizing around 16 billion euros. I'd be very grateful if you could give examples of some of those, contracts signed, but also how are you going to deliver that? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Maria, and thank you, Tymofiy, also for presenting already partially the Ukraine facility. It's good to hear it also from other people than from the Commission, I think. I had prepared also just 2 slides, but I will try not to repeat what has been said. If I can show them. No, I don't see the slides. Okay, so I will start without, but basically we have, as Tymofiy already explained, our Ukraine facility is a 50 billion euros package, which entered into force on 1st of March this year. So after record time for the Commission, but it's perfectly natural due to, I cannot open the slides, so I will do it without it. It's perfectly natural due to the urgency of the grant in Ukraine. But we have 3 pillars, so I will not develop on the first pillar, which is around 38 billion euros, but it's budgetary support for reforms and for investment in Ukraine. It's totally based on the plan, so Pillar 1 is the plan. What is important is indeed the multi-annual characteristic feature of the plan. So it's not only an annual plan, but it gives a prospect of stability for Ukraine when it comes to public resources, which was also mentioned in the introduction, that we need to have yes, thank you, some assurance on the long term and not only like annual budget. So that's something which is very important. And what is also important is that it already started to deliver. So I mentioned that the entry into force was 1st of March, but up to date, we have already paid 7.9 billion euros under the Ukraine facility Pillar 1. And the same amount is planned or even more by the end of this year. So it's already delivering on the ground. Then Pillar 2, and I will go into more details in Pillar 2, is what we call Ukraine Investment Framework. So to go a bit more in detail there, it's a 7 billion euros facility indeed in terms of budget for the EU. It's divided between grants or financial instruments. Like we can be quite creative in terms of what can be done. So we call that blending, but in reality it means investment grants. It can also be a capital injection in funds. We could also buy shares in funds or this kind of operation. And for that we have 1.5 billion euros, and then the rest is used to grant guarantees, which are usually used for loans, but that can also be used for equity participation from partners and so on. What is very important is that everything we do under this Pillar 2, under the Ukraine investment framework, is indirect management, meaning that we have to work through implementing partners, which are international financial institutions or development finance institutions from member states. So of course, EIB is a very important partner, and they also get 25% of the guarantee for their public operation in Ukraine. But it's also EBRD, it's also IFC if we talk about the multilateral one, but we also work with KfW, with BGK in Poland at the moment, and we are trying to work with many others in the EU. Pillar 3 will be very brief, but it's indeed about technical assistance. There is a budget which is on paper of 4.8 billion euros. Just the technical assistance part of it is much more reduced. It's around 600 million euros because Pillar 3 is also used to pay some legacy commitment and some interest rate payments related to Pillar 1. So that's the overall structure of our facility. But to go into something more concrete, and if you can go to the next slide, you mentioned more than 100 agreements signed under URC. What is important is that they are not all on us. So that's all the agreements which were signed at URC or announced. What we have done at URC is that we have signed 14 agreements between the Commission and implementing partners for the first phase of the Ukraine investment framework, which we call the open phase. The open phase because we wanted to go very quickly to deploy already in the first year, and the only solution for that was to look at what are already the products which are available on the market deployed by IFI, and can we simply increase the amount, increase the scope, but work with a structure that we already know. And we identified 14 agreements. It goes from 1 to 12 in this slide because some are divided between guarantees and grants, but that's a list of 12. And to give you more an idea of what the use will be, so we have signed 1.4 billion euros. Around 1/3 of it will be used for energy purposes. So you have, for example, EBRD IBAR for 150 million euros. It's only about loans to energy sector in Ukraine or other companies that want to develop some energy production in Ukraine. There is also 100 million grants given by KfW to Ukrenergo. So that's the very last one, the number 12, reconstruction and rehabilitation of the electricity transmission infrastructure. So here it was also an urgent measure that we took to really repair simply and also protect. So it's also construction of shelter for electricity transmission infrastructure in Ukraine. But other like GGF, FC, and also our operation with IFC can be used or will mainly be used for energy. So around 1/3 for energy and around 1/3 as well for SME. So here in this list, you've got many programs which are in fact we go via an international financial institution or developed finance institution, but themselves they work with banks that are active in Ukraine to guarantee portfolio of loans for SMEs. And that's a product that is quickly deployed also in Ukraine. So that's what we sign ourselves as a commission. But what is interesting and also makes part of these 100 agreements that you mentioned in total is that all implementing partners at URC, they also managed to sign with banks, with municipalities, with final beneficiaries. So we had also some example of this signature of contract, and it's really something we pushed. So I mentioned that our objective was to deploy very quickly, and we also put pressure on our partners to make sure that at URC, they can already have this kind of signature to show that it's not only that the money is available, but that the money is already used. So in our big signing ceremonies that we organized as a commission, we had more than 30 agreements which were signed which were, again, between the Commission and implementing partners, but also between implementing partners and final beneficiaries. Then for the other 70 agreements which were signed at URC, I think they come from very different sources and partners, so I will not comment on that. But that's what we've done until now, which I think, at least for us, is already quite an achievement. But of course, next step, what is important is that we continue on Pillar 1 and on budgetary support. So we have received last week, I think, the first payment request from Ukraine on the basis of the milestone and condition of the Ukraine plan, which were explained by Tymofiy earlier. So we are assessing it, and we want to move very quickly to the Council, which has to authorize the payment. Ukraine investment framework, so Pillar 2, we are working on, so on phase 2. So we are opening to new contribution, new proposal, and not only to work on the basis of something which was pre-existing, as I mentioned for the first one. So we are really enlarging our circle of partners. And then, of course, what I did not mention, but a big track for Gennadiy is the EU accession process. So the intergovernmental conference took place on 25th of June. It opened formally the accession negotiation, and the first screening meeting already took place early July. So that's a big work stream also for us. And I stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre-Arnaud. Fascinating figures there, and I'll ask you a few questions in the discussion. For the sake of time, I'm going to turn to Fabio Liberti, the European Commission representative, who will talk about the Commission's proposal for the European Defence Industry Programme, the so-called EDIP, because it enshrines within it the recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine's defence technological and industrial base and its integration into the EU's. Fabio, could you talk, please, what are the instruments and what is the Commission doing or proposing, at least at this stage, in terms of the reconstruction of Ukraine's defense industry, its potential integration into the EU's? What are the challenges encountered? And if you could mention a few deliverables from Berlin conference in that regard, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thanks for the kind invitation, and thanks, Amanda, for the introduction. As you said, I'm representing today the DG DEFIS, which is the newly born Directorate General for Defense Industry and Space, born just in 2020. So my focus is very much into the support to the competitiveness of the Union defense industry and the Ukrainian defense industry, which is an historical novelty, and it's a parallel strand if I compare it to the overall defense support. You might know that I only have the figures from January, but by January, member states and EU collectively delivered 28 billion worth of military equipment to Ukraine via the European Peace Facility, which is an intergovernmental instrument, notably. And of course, we just heard for Pierre-Arnaud, another parallel strand is the support, of course, for reconstruction and reform. So basically, our role is to fill a gap there, because Ukraine facility does not cover defense, and we wanted to focus on defense industry. And our role indeed is to contribute to the overall effort in view of providing, and here I'm quoting Commissioner Breton at the Foreign Affairs Council in May, he says that we need to provide Ukraine with everything it needs to prevail, both in the short and long term. You said it, early March, Commission and High Representative Vice President presented a new European Defence Industrial Strategy, which is accompanied by a program, European Defence Industry Program. And once again, and this is an historical novelty, the strategy and the program includes a vast set of measures to support the Ukrainian defense industry, treating it as it was already part of the Union. And it's historic because, as you know, Union program in defense generally have eligibility rules which are quite strict and limit the support to the Union defense industry and to associated countries. Now, why this major change of approach? Because, well, so far the defense industrial cooperation has been undertaken mostly on bilateral basis by member states. And what the strategy says is that a strong, resilient and integrated Ukrainian defense industry are essential to defend Ukraine, and to deter Russia from further aggression. Therefore, we need to support the integration of this Ukrainian defense industry to the EU one. Why? Because the scale of damage which has been caused by Russia, you know that they are targeting defense industrial infrastructure, is such that Ukraine will require a specific support that no member states can provide alone. Now, I will focus on the strategy first and then on the program. When it comes to strategy, some of the measures we announced already materialized. We organized together with the External Action Service on 6th of May a new Ukraine Defense Industries Forum to bolster cooperation between Ukraine and European defense industry. This conference gathered over 400 representatives from governments, EU, Ukraine defense industries, industry association, key partner countries, etc. Another important element of the strategy is that we will open by the autumn a defense innovation office in Kyiv. The objective here is to create a bridge between new innovative startups and Ukrainian companies. The idea is to be able to transmit novel and innovative technological breakthrough that can have an effect on the battleground and develop strong working relations between the EU and Ukrainian defense industry. Now, if I turn to the program, European Defense Industry Program, the novelty is that here what we are trying to do is try to ensure that Ukrainian needs are taken on board from the very outset, even in member states' procurement plan. So both in terms of common procurement, but also in terms of industrial production, defense industrial production ramp up. And to that end, if you look at the regulation establishing EDIP, you have basically two parallel programs, one which is targeting the European defense industry, and one which is called the Ukraine Support Industry, where the Ukrainian industry is eligible for EU funding. What will fund with that? I don't know how familiar you are with Union program, but basically EDIP is replicating a couple of logic of pre-existing program. One program is named EDIRPA. It is there to incentivize joint procurement for member states. So we are opening that possibility to Ukraine as well. And the second logic is the one of ASAP, which is a program which is incentivized defense industry to increase their production capacity. So these two elements together already will contribute to the recovery, reconstruction and modernization of the Ukraine defense industry. Just, I don't know how familiar you are with that, but again, I mean, Ukraine defense industry is doing a terrific job. I mean, they already shifted to a war economy model. They're proving a source of innovation. And let's not forget that Ukraine was basically the house of 1/3 of the USSR defense industrial capacities. We are talking about a major actor which is again targeted by Russia. And of course, we want it to be integrated from the outset to the DTIB in view also of the accession of Ukraine to the European Union. There are other elements very quickly within the program which are open to Ukraine. One is the proposed structure for European armament program, which is a legal structure we are creating to facilitating cooperation in the armament field, something which member states have been a bit reticent to do historically. We want Ukraine to be part to join from the outset. Two more things. One is what we call the Defense Industrial Readiness Pool. EDIP basically will fund the possibility for member states to procure additional quantities of defense system so that they can put that quickly at the service of member states or Ukraine needing it. And last but not least, EDIP opened the possibility for the Commission to act as a central purchasing body on behalf of member states in Ukraine to procure a defense system with the budget of member states. So via, for instance, advanced purchase agreement, which is what has been used for vaccine. Now, coming to the difficult part of my intervention, the budget to support Ukraine defense industry. You know that we are operating in a financial framework, in the multi-annual financial framework, which is very constrained at this stage. So to fund this Ukraine support instrument, so far we see two possibilities. One is a financial top-up by member states using what we call in the EU jargon external assigned revenues, or the other part, and Commissioner Breton is very much insisting on that, is to use part of the windfall profit generated by by the frozen Russian assets. State of play, EDIP is being negotiated with the co-legislator, with the council in particular, since the parliament has not yet started working. We expect it to enter into force by mid-25 at the latest. And once again, I mean, we are aware that this is far from being enough in light of Ukrainian needs, but you also know that the European Commission has also been tasked by the European Council to work on what we call funding options for the October European Council. In the European Defence Industrial Strategy, there is a whole chapter which says basically that the defence and defence industrial needs are massive, and that we need to have a clear and frank conversation with member states on how we fund that. President von der Leyen made the first report at the June European Council, and again, the outcome has been a tasking to the European Commission and the European External Action Service to come back to the October UCO for that. And I will stop there, Maria, for not being too long. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Indeed, we're quite pressed with time. I'd like now to open up the floor for questions. I see there is one question which I would like to read out, and I suppose that would be for Tymofiy more than anyone. What impact can the resignation of Mustafa Nayyem, the head of Ukraine's Restoration and Infrastructure Development Agency, and Infrastructure Minister Alexander Kubrakov have on the reconstruction of Ukraine? What impact can it have on Ukraine's reputation among its international partners? Tymofiy, would you be able to take this question? Hello? I know that in Ukraine, we do have problems with electricity. It might be, I was pre-warned about that. It might be that Tymofiy is just lost his connection. Oh, he's here.
My
Tymofiy,
connection
hello.
is indeed intermittent, and I'm struggling with this, but
Yes.
I had to change the Wi-Fi to a different source. So if
Thank
you can
you.
repeat the question, I will be happy to address it.
Right. It's a question in the Q&A, which is, there's been a resignation of the head of Ukraine's Restoration and Infrastructure Development Agency head, Mustafa Nayyem, and of Infrastructure Minister Alexander Kubrakov. So Matej Prashil is asking, what is the impact on that, if any, on the reconstruction of Ukraine?
Okay, so this is a politically delicate question, and it's polarizing in some ways. So it's domestic politics in part too. And, you know, we see how heated the political issues could be in any country right now. So, and it's in some sense, it's a sign that that politics is alive and well in Ukraine. So let me give that background. Then on Mustafa Nayyem, actually, I'm friends with him, and he's an important symbol in Ukraine. He's an opinion leader. He's the one who called for initial protests in 2013 for the Revolution of Dignity. So he's a hero in Ukraine. And now the restoration agency requires different skills. So, you know, there are two narratives currently. One narrative is outside of Ukraine and within the opposition domestically, is that, you know, he's an anti-corruption person, he's a fighter, and the system kicked him out. The another narrative is within the restoration aid, well, you know, outside of his team, is that, well, you know, the place for anti-corruption is important, but we also need, it cannot be the entire focus. We actually have to have deliverables and results. So I think it's a combination of a match of skills, and there could be very different perspectives. And I've spoken with them, and I've spoken with his opponents. Mustafa argues that he has done a fantastic work of the systemic approach to the agency. I think it's true, but his opponents are arguing that this is all great, but we need restoration today, and not the effort should be better focused on what can be done today rather than building a system which will work in several years. And you can understand that when people don't have housing, or when people don't, they want to have results right now. So you can see there is one tension. At the Kubrakov's level, I think it's more of domestic politics, and discussion of who could be a potential next prime minister, and some people win in this fight, some people lose in these fights. So that's how I read it, and it doesn't mean that he's out. He's very well could be back. So I think it's more of that kind of friction. For now, if you follow Ukrainian politics, there've been some rumors and some media that the prime minister could potentially be replaced. Now that did not happen. So it looks like the prime minister has won the battle, or temporarily, but there have been other names floated, and and I think he was one of the people about half a year or a year ago. He was a prime contender potentially to replace the prime minister. Now he's out of the government. Me being in the government, I take it as a little bit with a grain of salt, and say, yeah, that's organization, domestic politics. More than anything else.
Thank you, Tymofiy, very much. And thank you for the audience for raising the question. I just have one quick question to Fabio and one quick to Arnaud, and then we will really have to start the other panel. Pierre-Arnaud, the reconstruction of Ukraine is taking place again in the background of the destruction of Ukraine, which is one of Russia's military objectives. In terms of its socio-economy, in terms of its human potential, in terms of its defense potential. And, every little bit of help helps, €1, €10, €100, 100 million euros. But let's be concrete and practical. And you are a banker, former banker yourself. In order to have a material impact in reconstructing Ukraine, medium and longer term, and to withstand Russia's persistent aggression, you really have to reconstruct on scale or at scale. That means in terms of volume, in terms of time, in terms of budget. How do you define success of Ukraine facility in this context? Also knowing that it is a limited instrument only until 2027. And I think already now we should be planning much more longer term as the war is continuing. If you could give 1-2 minute answer, Pierre-Arnaud, that would be fantastic. Thanks.
Yes, on the long-term perspective, I think that discussion will start soon, but my colleague also talked about our financial framework, and it ends in 2027, so it's a question of alignment, but there will be fierce discussion in the EU about the next budget, not only about Ukraine. Discussion are fierce about any topic, so that will be our usual machine. But we very much hope that there will be like a follow-up of this facility. Then, of course, like the needs are enormous when we talk about reconstruction, and you're all aware about this RDNA exercise, or rapid damage needs assessment made by World Bank. I think that they said that the needs and damages amounted to close to $500 billion. So we are very far from it with our Ukraine facility and with our Ukraine investment framework in particular. So. But what is important is just to make the best use of every single euro and try to leverage and make sure that we can get the private sector on board, because public resources alone will never make it. So with our instrument of 7 billion euros in the budget, what we aim at is leveraging up to 40 billion euros of investment. And with the 1.4 that we signed in Ukraine, in Berlin during the Ukraine Recovery Conference, we also estimate that we'll trigger 6 billion euros of investment. So the same type of leverage. So that's what we have to be careful at, to make sure that we select carefully the investment, that we have the right criteria when we work with our implementing partners to make the best use of every single euro. Of course, 400 billion euros is still far from the total damages and needs assessment of Ukraine, but it's not something insignificant. As you said, every 10 euro counts. So if we can get already these 40 billion euros in the right track, and then other partners have also their own instrument, then we are taking it to the right direction.
Thank you very much. And the next question to Fabio. Fabio, the reconstruction of Ukraine in terms of its socio-economy is happening with largely unprotected skies of Ukraine. And, EDIP, the Commission's proposal in EDIP has made Ukraine's reconstruction of its defense industry one of its overarching objectives. And what is striking indeed is that Ukraine is treated on par to EU member states in terms of eligibility for joint procurement, in terms of ramping up of industrial production. Does it mean that Ukraine is basically accessing EU single market for defense? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Maria. I will give you a concrete example on that also to show you the scale of the evolution of what has happened in the recent year in terms of support to defense and defense industry. I spoke about the EDIRPA logic, so about the program which the Commission has presented in 2022 and which is in force now. With EDIRPA, basically what we are doing is that we are providing financial incentive to member states to cooperate in joint procurement of the most urgent and critical defense items. The objective there is indeed to give the capacity to the defense industry to ramp up its production by giving them an increased visibility about member states' need. Within EDIRPA, there is a provision which allows member states to procure and also to receive a bonus in case they procure on behalf of Ukraine and Moldova as well in that case. And actually the calls for proposal, the calls for project are open now and they will close by July 25, and air defense is one of the priority. So indeed, I mean, we are acutely aware of the massive needs when it comes to defense equipment, to defense industry of Ukraine. And indeed, I mean, we are treating member states as it was already a member state, so trying to integrate the Ukrainian defense industry into the EU DTIB. Why that? Because Ukraine is on the path of accession. As I told you, Ukraine defense industry has massive capacity, has proven a massive innovative capacity, and we believe that if we start already now integrating the Ukrainian defense industry into what we call the DTIB, the European Defense Technological Industrial Base, well, this will be mutually beneficial, things in terms of standards, firms in terms of partnership, etc. And we strongly believe that this needs to be arranged in a sense at the European level. Bilateral relations are excellent. Of course, we have nothing against that, but integrating that from the outset to the DTIB will prove a very strong asset for a sector which will be one of the engine of the economic recovery of the country post-war.
Thank you, Fabio. Very interesting to hear about priorities and progress when it comes to reconstruction of Ukraine's defense base, which is absolutely critical for the Ukrainian and Euro-Atlantic security. I'd like to move now to the, there is one more question. Let me just quickly see. Right, I'll try to leave that question and would like to proceed to the second round if that's okay. And we have time, we will answer it because we already dedicated quite a bit of time to the first panel. I would like to proceed with the second panel and thank you very much to the first panel participants and speakers. Now we will turn to hear the perspective of the private businesses and a charity who are playing different but absolutely essential roles in investing and mobilizing investment in the reconstruction of Ukraine. Anna, you represent the European businesses in Ukraine. Please tell us, how do you assess the outcome of Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin? Are these instruments, such as Pierre-Arnaud has outlined and, in connection to how Tymofiy described the Ukraine plan, are they attractive enough to engage European businesses community at scale? And what are the barriers that you think should be addressed to facilitate the business participation in these instruments? And if you could give a few examples, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me start from giving gratitude to Europe for supporting Ukraine and this very challenging and very difficult journey Just yesterday and today, Ukraine and Kyiv in particular beats the next or the new record with having less than 15 hours, basically having cutoffs of energy for 15 hours. So basically nowadays the mood actually inside Ukraine is how to survive, how to overcome not just winter, but how to survive the summer, how to prepare for autumn, and how to actually be equipped to the new challenges. So when it comes to Berlin, of course, we all have mixed feelings. And here I would like to tell a big respect to the organizers of the Berlin conference, because it was outstanding from the standpoint of networking. To organize more than 3,500 people in a very smooth manner, it is something incredible. And it's like Tymofiy was saying, it was really perceived by the business community as a huge fair, because after all, it was really a high level participation from the governmental officials and also from private business. So it means that actually networking practically swallowed everyone, and everyone had the opportunity to talk to each other, which is probably should be the main aim of the conferences. Now, when it comes to the contracts and memorandum and such, frankly speaking, it seems to me it was a precondition to participate in the conference, just to sign something there. But nevertheless, the private sector does not believe in that very much. Why? Because actually the whole work is being done between the conferences, and basically the conferences could be the culmination. But nevertheless, they should not be like self-purposed for signing the deals, because after all, the conferences should serve as a basis for networking, so that people can get to know each other, they can actually meet each other, and then afterwards build on that. Now, when it comes to the financial instruments, and do we have enough or not? And by the way, actually, before to tell about that, I think that one of the things which was really very important and striking for some of the businesses, and it was also striking for me after the conference, because when I was asking one of the participants how did he like the Berlin event, and it was actually the CEO of very, very, very strong and big bank in Ukraine. Actually, he was saying, I'm so happy. And I was thinking, why he was so happy. And he was saying that I'm happy that Ukraine will survive, basically, because the key thing and the key doubt for him was actually how Ukraine is going to survive all this. But after the Berlin conference, he has got the feeling that Ukraine will get enough support to overcome this difficult period. Of course, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be really very challenging, but nevertheless, he came with the idea and with the understanding, as many other private sector participants, that Ukraine will be supported by European stakeholders, by US, etc. But nevertheless, we all have to look at the real actions and real deeds. So now, when it comes to financing, I would like to give you some sort of figures, basically just from our recent polls, and just for everyone to understand, European Business Association represents around 900 companies as members. All of them operate on the Ukrainian market. They all stay on Ukrainian market. They pay taxes to the state budget, and they create jobs, and they are making efforts to pay growing salaries to their employees. And also, as a spin-off of our activities, we have also registered 2 years ago, literally 2 years ago, our Swiss-based institution, which is titled Global Business for Ukraine. And currently, it comprises 25 companies as members. So what our recent polls show? 47% of businesses plan to use their own funds in 2024. 15% use bank loans, 11% investments, 4% grants, and 21% have no plans regarding funding for the second half of 2024. 75% of businesses do not want to take loans from banks because of high interest rates. This is the top reason for companies. Then 93% of businesses didn't use military risk programs because the procedures are too over-regulating, are hard to understand, whether who is responsible for what, who is responsible to answer questions, and it's quite often too long in time to get it. Then, during one of our actually surveys, we also asked what assistance businesses will need most of all this moment. And there are the answers: improvement of employee reservation conditions. So, because actually #1 challenge for Ukrainian businesses is actually access to labor. Then also moratorium on inspections, assistance in communication with the governmental agencies, and tax incentives. So from the first glance, it can sound also that we have so many financial instruments available for the private sector to invest into Ukraine. They are available from Germany, Poland, Austria, Netherlands, Japan, etc. But unfortunately, we have to admit that actually literally limited amount of people or limited amount of businesses really use them. And here I can give you one of the example of company which invests 60 million euros nowadays in Ukraine during the wartime. And basically they were trying to receive financial instruments from Germany, from which company is coming from. And basically Germany said, oh no, you cannot get access to money because you are structured in Ukraine through your Dutch subsidiary. Okay, fine. This company went to the Netherlands just to seek for funding as well. And in Netherlands, they looked into the files and said, oh no, we cannot finance you because you actually originally coming from Germany. So actually go to Germany. Okay, then company tried to actually to go to DFC because they don't care from which country this company comes from. But DFC was actually taking care of where the money is coming from, basically. And since this company is already registered in Ukraine and they actually are going to finance their project from inside Ukraine, basically DFC said, oh no, we cannot actually finance you with our instruments. And basically as a result, company which is really very prominent, it is very known all over the world, and it invests all the time in Ukraine and invests now, basically was ended up with no support so far from actually available financial instruments. Obviously, there are some success stories, and the success stories we've had also during the Berlin conference signed, and we have also, for example, industrial park being financed in Lviv through MEGA project. But nevertheless, this is just our figures show that actually, regardless, we still need to have actually less bureaucratic system for getting access to money. We should give more clarity as to how to get access to this money. And basically, we should also be honest whether those financial instruments might finance also companies which might come to these zones, which are now under substantial aggressive shelling from Russia. So in this respect, it seems to me there are lots of things which have to be yet scrutinized so that match the gap between something which is being offered by the stakeholders from abroad and also which could be used by Ukrainian legal entities and foreign legal entities. And briefly, I would like to summarize with structure of issues why actually we see that actually those instruments are not working. For Ukrainian legal entities, as mentioned, difficult access to governmental and IFCs and international financial institutions' financial instruments. 89% of our companies that participated in recent survey research stated that they have not used any governmental instruments because basically they don't believe that they will be able to get them. Then the second is high rates for credits in Ukrainian banks. So that's why 75% of companies basically said that they are not ready to take the loans from Ukrainian banks. They believe that they are not flexible and they're really quite expensive. Number 3 issue for Ukrainian companies is problem with access to war risk insurance and war risk mechanisms. And here, even if we have Ukrainian Export Credit Agency, they recently launched also 2 programs for private business, but nevertheless, there are difficulties to use them and to apply them into the basically areas where there are active military actions. Number 4 issue for Ukrainian legal entities is problem with lack of qualified labor, basically because of the mobilization. Number 5, and that's why they cannot actually foresee how to develop their projects. Number 5 is a problem with electricity cuts. So that's why they really need to assess whether it's really worthwhile to invest. And number 6 is general unpredictability and uncertainty, because it's really impossible to forecast what is going to happen next. And there are also 4 issues for foreign legal entities, which we believe are also impeding their active appetite to invest, is quite limited support from foreign governments to foreign legal entities that would like to start business in Ukraine. It's going, but nevertheless, it's not enough, obviously. The second is absence of stimulus for companies to leave Russian market. Then third is absence of work insurance mechanisms in many countries and quite difficult procedure to get access to them. And obviously the same as for Ukrainian legal entities is general uncertainty and predictability. So that's why when companies are just reading news, obviously they are scared, and that's why basically they need to be really very brave actually to try to discover what could be done in Ukraine. But having said so, obviously the sectors which are very interesting for investment would be defense, health, energy, and agriculture processing. So these and infrastructural things. So obviously they're all already needing investments now. So I think that we need to develop something in order to bridge the gap between something which is being offered and something which is being demanded by the private sector.
Thank you, Anna, very much for this reality check from Ukraine. I think it's very revealing what potential there exists, but we haven't yet captured it to the full extent. And thank you for outlining so well and with such clarity the impediments and barriers at Ukrainian level, at European level, and at international level. And I'm quite surprised with how high the figures of your polls are. 89, 93%. The fact that some companies, Ukrainian legal entities, don't believe that they would even get access. So there's indeed a lot of more work to be done. But I would like to proceed with Gennadiy now. Gennadiy, a similar question to you as well, in terms of what's the mood and feel in Ukraine. You represent a chamber that unites around 8,000 members. Over 1,000 representatives of business from all parts of Ukraine receive consultations and help from experts of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in different directions. Could you shed light on how would you see how to boost local investments in Ukraine, and in particular from the perspective of small and medium-sized enterprises of Ukraine? And what's the feel about this Berlin conference, which we all refer to as such a fantastic fair and one of the biggest ones, but then when we look at reality, as Anna says, the picture is quite mixed. Thank you very much, Gennadiy.
Okay, thank you very much. For me, it's a big honor to have a floor together with my colleagues Tymofiy, Anna, with some and other friends, and share some ideas concerning the business. First of all, Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Industry is an organization who represents, first of all, Ukrainian small and medium-sized business. And we represent it in 25 regions, and with businesses very typical for Ukraine. That's why when many people ask me, Gennadiy, what's I do in the wide sense in the Chamber of Commerce, we are very much responsible for understanding the main trends in economy and to share these trends with our businesses to better understand what we see now and what will be in the nearest future. First of all, we needed to understand 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, in the beginning of the war, and all this 22 was very difficult year. I don't know how many economies in Europe or in the world during the year lost nearby 30% of GDP, nearby 30% of export. And despite this economy continuing to work, economy and most of business still positive. This is, I speak about the Ukraine. And very important, I see in many countries of Europe where no war, life is very traditional, very quiet. Now it's summer holidays, etc. The inflation is higher than in Ukraine. You can imagine how it's a combination of macroeconomics, microeconomics combination of our government together with the business more or less controls the situation in the economy. This is very important. That's why this is very important sign to the business abroad, what Ukrainian economy due to the support of our partners from European Union, from states, more or less under control. This is very general. Of course, it's everybody in the business can say it should be better, but anyway, it's more or less under control. Second one, if we speak about the trends, the tendencies, I would like to emphasize on the track attention to the 6 tendencies what we saw in the Chamber of Commerce. First of all, according to the latest survey conducted in partnership with UNDP, Ukraine, 91% of our members, first of all, small and medium, are resumed activity since the beginning of the full-scale renovation, 91%. Second one, business is are strategically relocating a Ukrainian business easy to relocate in Ukraine from the eastern part, from the south part to the central part of Ukraine, more safety western part. And what's interesting, in the European country. And they found the new possibilities start their activities in Europe. According to different type of information, nearby 60,000 Ukrainian entities working in only in Poland. 1,600 businesses opened their activity in Bulgaria, for example. It's demonstrated how what Ukrainian business very fast to can work in different situations. This is a second tendency. One more, we need to understand what Ukraine is. It was, but becoming more and more export-oriented country. Because we see what's first of all, it's a drop in the population purchasing power. A lot of people left the country. It's many other economical issues. That's why we very much depend on the export activity. It's due to our strength position in, first of all, in the agriculture sector and many others. This is very important. And for us, export orientation is very much important. Second one, the fourth one, rapid European integration. For Ukraine, Euro integration, it's a goal. We believe in this, and we're moving in this. In ways. We are doing many reforms quite fast. Sorry, and what's interesting, we also made some survey with our members, and they were very much optimistic. Maybe sometimes more optimistic than many other people in Ukraine. They say it was 46% of companies in Ukraine believe they can compete in European market. 46%. And 37% believe it is difficult, but possible. Which means most of Ukrainian business, more or less, sorry.
Totally support, by the way, actually, Gennadiy, but this was basically the business is really resilient and very optimistic. Goes without saying, ours as well.
Yes, very good. Yes, I agree. And for us, for Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, like and for my colleague from EBA, what we are needed? We needed to prepare Ukrainian business for new European reality. It's not easy. When we speak of big business, middle-sized plus business, more or less understandable, but small business, this is like Europe now, like MBA for, okay, it's new reality, okay? And due to the what's nearby 5 or 6 million people now in Europe, it's like graduation of new knowledge. It's a graduate of new understanding. From my point of view, it's also it's possible to estimate like bad side because a lot of people left Ukraine, but from other side, it's a very fast understanding how was Europe working, etc., etc. One more thing, very important. It's really very important. Green in the transformation. Now, due to what nearby 50% of our energy sector destroyed, people think about the future. It's first of all decentralization of energy sector and focus on green energy. And from my point of view, if always, like Anna said, I'm one of the most optimistic people, sorry. I believe what's future or in future in Europe, Ukraine can be one of the most green energy oriented country possible, because we have very strong position in agriculture sector. It's biomass. We have also possibility for solar energy and many other things. And final, what Ukraine, it's 6%. What's Ukraine very much depends on the seaports, because before the war we had 18 seaports. We exported 100 million tons of different type of products. First of all, agriculture. That's why for us it's a new logistic should be connected only with sea. Without sea, it will be very difficult to walk to make a business in Ukraine. That's why for us this green corridor, if I can say, from Odessa, dramatically important for this period of time. It's because we understood by train, by cars, it's not possible to transport our export products. And Berlin. Concerning the Berlin, Anna said very absolutely right. I agree with you. But for us, for small and medium-sized Ukraine, very important, three important things. First, it's financial support. Ukrainian small and medium-sized business needed a very clear scheme how to support Ukrainian small and medium-sized business. Second one, we support this, but with the same time, we would like to understand how everything will be. With a so-named SME Resilience Alliance was created during this conference. How it will be, it will be very transparent, very understandable not for governors, not for officials, for businesses, for small and medium-sized businesses, sometimes in the small village, etc., etc. And one last one, it's also concerned my colleagues, is guaranteeing grant agreement under the investment components of the Ukraine facility plans. Very important. If not first, second question of all our partners abroad, they ask guarantee. No, we will do a lot in this direction, but without the support of our friends, colleagues, and partners abroad, it will be very difficult. But what I would like to see, from my point of view, if we speak about the tendency, Ukrainian economy will be after the war absolutely different. It will be two different countries, what was before the war and after the war. And I agree with my colleagues what our main priorities, etc. But first of all, we will create the new economy on the base of the green economy, because without this, it will be very difficult to be competitive in the market of European Union. That's why in Ukraine, speaking about the green metallurgy sector, about the many other sectors as well. And in general, of course, I like to be optimistic, but I would like to say what in general Ukrainian business demonstrated cautious optimism about the future. This is would like to. It's they would like to work in Ukraine. They would like to do for countries, but of course, I come back again to the Berlin. Without international support, without the financial support, it will be for this period of time quite difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Absolutely fascinating to hear the level of resilience and adaptation and forward-looking spirits in this very difficult context of the country. And indeed, the potential that there is there, you know, if people move out, you think of how to leverage them. If you need to relocate, you see what are the strategic areas. If just to resume the activities. Thank you very much. Maryna, I'd like to turn to you. Crowdfunding is another business model that contributes to the reconstruction of Ukraine at local level. Please share with us your experience with different projects that you're working on in terms of the reconstruction of Ukraine. And if you could emphasize the barriers from your interactions with the private sector and local producers and manufacturers, I would be very grateful. We have 5 minutes. Thank you. Are you there, Maryna? It could be again related to the fact that there are electricity shortages in Ukraine.
Yeah, today there was 15 hours without electricity, and actually now we have siren again in Kyiv, so it's every day, many times.
I'll quickly check if she messaged me. I'll just wait for a few more seconds.
While you're checking, it looks like that here the question is what reforms and regulatory changes are needed in Ukraine to align with EU standards.
Indeed, perhaps we can, if she appears, I'll give her the floor.
Okay.
Let's go for the discussion because indeed only 10 minutes left. Rui Dang is asking, will EU support Ukraine to developing and implementing regulatory frameworks that incentivize green innovation and renewable energy adoption and support the creation of standards and certifications for green products and technologies? So if I could appeal to our EU, probably Pierre-Arnaud, but perhaps also Fabio, because, you know, we also can talk about green defense and how, you know, defense could be more sustainable into the future. If you could answer this, what is the EU support in that regard with the regulatory frameworks and incentivization of green innovation? Thank you.
Hello, are you hearing me? I'm so sorry. Yeah, hello.
Hello, no problem. No problem, Maryna. Thank you for coming back. We were hoping you would reconnect.
Yeah, I have a really bad connection because of air alerts, so I went to the ground floor in our building.
No problem. No problem. I'm gonna project your slides.
Thank you.
And please go ahead and talk to us about, give us an example of the projects you're working on. Let me just find your slide.
I could share if it works.
I think I'm already sharing.
Okay. Great. Could you please go to the first slide?
Do you see the first slide?
Yeah. That's fine. So just briefly, thank you very much for the invitation. Sorry for my speech from the ground floor, but it's current situation in Ukraine. So I represent here Serhiy Prytula Humanitarian Foundation. We are help civilians on the deoccupied and frontline territories with different project areas. Could you please move to the second slide? Thank you so much. So here we work with different types of projects, starts from the temporary modular housing for the families till to crisis emergency response, depend on the situation. If we all remember the destroying of Kakhovka Dam, where we work with this too, and also we already accumulated and provide help for the civilians around 8 million euros since the full-scale invasion for the 2.5, let's say, year. And currently I would like to tell a bit more about two of our projects. It's Nest. Could you please the second slide? Yeah, it's we help with this project. We help to restore the occupied communities with housing, with the social and economic life inside the communities. We're installing these temporary houses on the land of the families, so the communities stay together, they're working together, they're living together, they're not moved to another regions of Ukraine. And we're working with these projects on the Makariv region. It's close to the Kyiv. It's already the occupied and the mined territory, and this safe place for the people to live here. And we already installed 46 modular houses. It's around 125 persons living there, and they're living and working in these communities. Also, we support the local businesses because the manufacturers of these houses, it's a Ukrainian company, the producers of modular houses. They completely rethink their designs for these families. It's fully furnitured houses, fully installed, and we're planning to replicate the stories and for the other regions when it would be more safe. Not now, but in the future, yes. And these houses actually help the families to pretend to receive the governmental aid and just like live on their land and start to rebuild their normal houses on the construction. So another project is the Safe and Smart project. We reconstruct and equip school shelters. We already have 3 school shelters to fully reconstruct. One close to the Kyiv, it's also Pushchevoditsa, and 2 in the Kharkiv regions. And this is really important for the communities because, for example, one community in Kharkiv region, it's Novopokrovka, consists around 5-6 villages around this community, and the people from these villages have only one actually bomb shelter. It's a school shelter, and we're really would like to reconstruct and rebuild it and equip it like a safe and smart place for the children and also safe place for the people. And yeah, and we already equipped 43 schools around Ukraine and around the occupied territories, and still trying to help all of them, but it's really costly for us and actually for schools too, because it's huge budgets. And also we have barriers to obtain the reconstruction, to rebuild permits, because lots of bureaucracy in this field. To be honest, to receive the one permission, we're waiting for one bomb shelter around 3 to 5 months. And I think for the wartime, it's not so good timing, let's say, because the time it's that's life for us now. Could you please move to another slide? Yeah, we're also working with the State Transport Service of Ukraine. This is the agency, the state, which dealing with humanitarian demining. We providing these demining brigades with special equipments. For example, you could see on the next slide, we're bought for them a special soil preparation machine. It's the demining machine, which already working on the Kharkiv region, and we bought it from the local manufacturer. It's why we're actually buying this from the local manufacturers, because it's price. For example, the price of this machine in Ukraine production is 130,000 euros. But if we compare the similar machine from internationally, it starts from 800,000, kind of the 6 times expensive that we could produce it here. But also we have here also barriers. This is kind of the barriers of lack of standards. Because, for example, for this machine, till January 2024, we didn't have a standard, national standard. And we're initiated, like we participated in a group which actually working with the standard, and we're really happy that we already have a national standard for this soil preparation machine in Ukraine and all the producers of this kind of this machine. And we already have around 10 producers in Ukraine on the different stage of technological readiness level for these machines, but the production is working, and we're really happy that we could do this impact for the producers, and we support the local business, support as we can. So that is my short presentation, and I would be really happy to hear your questions and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you for being so flexible and finding a safe place to speak. Really, really appreciate it. Now, we heard the investors or business community perspective, so to say, from big players to small and medium-sized companies to smaller business models like crowdfunding that are working actively at local level. And we heard about the barriers, be they standards, lack of standards, be they difficulties in accessing the labor market, or for SMEs to access finance, general unpredictability about the war. And we also, I raised the question just before the Prytula Foundation took the floor. how to address basically the regulatory frameworks at EU level, and what further incentives could be given in order to stimulate green innovation, but overall to overcome the barriers towards additional mobilization of investment. Anna, could we start with you?
Yeah, obviously. So when it comes to, I will try to pick up. I will try to pick up actually all the questions which I see here in the chat. When it comes to green energy and the green transformation, I believe that obviously here the most important thing is actually money, how we are going to finance it, and will it be possible to get access to structural funds of European Union, and whether it will be possible somehow to invest in Ukraine in this respect, because after all, green recovery, green metallurgy, green energy is actually equaling money. When it comes to reforms which are needed in order to be part of European Union and somehow be closer to EU norms and standards, here I think number one reform would be a judiciary system and introduction of the rule of law. This is the fundamental block for building further, because if it will be missing, it will be very difficult to actually to expect the situation is going to develop into the right direction. But I think that Ukraine really makes efforts and it goes in the right direction. It tries actually to really implement lots of changes during these really unprecedented and very difficult times. And I think I should really support the government here, because they are working 24/7, actually every day without any breaks. And basically, I think that actually they really deserve this appreciation for their huge efforts to maintain the economy and also speak out at the international front in terms of what kind of support is being needed. And there was also a question with regards to citizens of Ukraine who left Ukraine and who are now in the member states of European Union. And here I think that actually, yes, the longer those people stay outside of Ukraine, the more chances that they will not come back to Ukraine. At least it is not my observation, it's actually the observation of the sociologists actually, and those ones who are really very strong in demographic researches and surveys. It's just a matter of humanity, because actually the longer you stayed outside of your home country, you actually get your new friends, your children goes to schools outside of your home country, and then it actually makes it more difficult to detach from your new destination and come back home, with which you actually literally lose the connection. So, but it is possible if Ukraine will be able to actually offer really very stable and secure conditions for living, because we also have inside the EBA barometer for actually a quality of life. And this barometer of quality of life, or barometer of happiness, also gives the hints in which direction we need to move in order to actually keep people inside the country and bring them back from European Union and elsewhere. And obviously, the key fundamental blocks are healthcare system, education, ability to have access to work, to jobs, and obviously security and infrastructure. If those pillars are going to be improved, substantially improved, then obviously people will come back, because the number one driver for people going out of Ukraine was actually security, or better to say insecurity. So if Ukraine, together with the whole democratic world, is going to address the issue of security, actually, if there will be security guarantees, and if there will be, and for sure it will be, lots of jobs in order to reconstruct Ukraine in better standards, in green dimensions, then obviously people will be actually willing to come back. But let's see how it goes, because so far we are actually in the phase of complete uncertainty and impossibility to plan anything.
Thank you very much. And since we already passed our time, there's just one thing I'd like each speaker to do, which is, could you, starting with Tymofiy, with the first panel, could you name one or two recommendations that are essential for mobilizing additional investments in Ukraine, now and longer term? Thank you. Tymofiy, we start with you. If Tymofiy is not here at the moment, we will go to the other speaker, then Pierre-Arnaud.
Thank you. That's a very difficult question. One or two. I think first, we need to ensure that basic infrastructure are present for businesses to come. And we talk quite a lot about energy, but there are also other infrastructure. So I think that's for me the priority now, which was not necessarily what we were thinking about when we drafted the Ukraine facility regulation. So that's one thing, basic infrastructure, and second is more difficult, but I think we need maybe to make progress when it comes to EU accession, or also deep comprehensive free trade agreements, like to show that there are some rewards for businesses and some prospect for a future single market.
Thank you, Fabio.
Difficult question indeed, Maria. I would say, well, I will limit myself to defense industry. Obviously, defense industry in Ukraine are a target. So it's obvious that, you know, asking European companies to install themselves in Ukraine bear some risks. But this is something which is, of course, the responsibility of Russia. When it comes to what we can do from our side, I would say two things. The first one is ensure that Union defense programs such as EDIP are adequately funded. And again, I mean, this is our internal cuisine, but this is something which is needed. With financial incentives, we can change the situation. And the second thing I would say is that, you know, when it comes to the European Investment Bank, the exclusion of defense as an eligible sector, this is highly problematic, because we saw with Ukraine facility how important the EIB role is in implementing this plan.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Maria. You know, it depends to whom we address this question in terms of recommendations, because obviously there are various stakeholders. So in this respect, in terms of European stakeholders, the recommendation is to keep actually supporting Ukraine somehow, whatever, like keep going, because I understand how difficult it is actually to maintain growing expenditures and just for the sake of actually giving some support to Ukraine. But at the same time, I think that it's really of paramount importance actually to keep this country continuing and to survive. And obviously keep going to support its efforts to become a member of European Union. And by the way, also it's important actually to keep the boundaries of European Union so that not to collapse, because there are of course there are many challenges for European Union itself as well. So in this respect, I think that we need actually to take it also into consideration. And when it comes to Ukrainian stakeholders, I think it's important actually to also to keep working, continue the reforms, somehow be inspired by European values, and European businesses just keep doing actually what they are doing, because they are simply heroes.
Thank you, Gennadiy.
Yes. Thank you very much. This is a very good question, a very typical question, what I hear during last couple months. From one side, we should understand what Ukraine, one of the most interesting destination for investment in the future. And this is homework not only for Ukraine, but also homework for Europe and America and other countries. Life is like a marathon. It's not possible to be a sprinter, just now or never. I prefer to marathons. That's why, from my point of view, when the business consider Ukraine like a very important country who play a very important role in the food security, in the energy sector. Before the war, we was country with the we have additional possibility for energy sectors, for many other things. That's why we need to unite our efforts. And from my point of view, we needed to share right information. When I visit European countries, France, Germany, Poland, etc., we see the information due to the CNN, for some European news, etc. Information when the businesses come in Ukraine, absolutely different. And what I'm doing now in the Chamber of Commerce, I invited business delegation. Despite the war, it's safety. Don't worry. We organize a meeting, and they see their own eyes the potential of Ukraine, and they very fast change their opinion. It's not needed finishing of the war. We are ready to start work with Ukraine now. My main idea, it's not to think only about the big, like in marathon, about the finish. What's needed to start? Please run and think about what we can just now, step by step, and we will see how everything will be successful.
Thank you very much. And Maryna?
Yeah, and for me, I'm actually completely agree with Anna. Please keep going to support our country, and from our side, we're actually trying to help with strategic purchasing for the buying from the local domestic manufacturers. With this buying, we enhancing domestic capabilities of production and actually innovation inside the country, and also kind of a recommendation. We really want this charitable foundation, which we're working in the local market, to a bit simplify administrative procedure for us and for all the stakeholders in this field, because it's as I said previously, the time is actually money, and the time is actually our life. We need to simplify all this procedure and fast as we can. Yeah.
Thank you so much to all the speakers and the audience. And sorry, with a slight delay, I would just like to thank for all the potentials and barriers highlighted. And if Ukraine keeps the optimism and resilience as they're keeping, and keep reforming while they are facing war, there is really no excuse on the side of the Western Europe and EU to not keep going and not double down on our efforts, because at the end of the day, we are in this together. I thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate the efforts invested in this. And I will let you go right now, as we are in any case 10 minutes late. Thank you very much.